are you guys doing? I am doing well. I'm very excited about today's video. It is going up on January the 20th, which is my daughter Serena's very first birthday. Oh my god, I can't believe it's been a year since I had her. I literally feel like I just had her. Like, I can't. It's... time goes by fast. Too fast. I wanted to tell you guys the story of how I had my daughter. If you are uncomfortable with like childbirth or anything, feel free to click out on this video. I have plenty of videos on the channel that you can watch instead. I'm not going to be talking like too graphic about it. I just wanted to kind of like generally talk about how I had my daughter. It's just something I'd like to talk about, or if you've never gotten to hear this story and you know me personally, hi, you can finally hear me tell it. Before I get to the day that we had Serena, to give you guys a timeline, I had her on January the 20th. I guess the process probably started like New Year's, or like, okay, right after Christmas I started what they call nesting, which is like getting everything ready. I had to have everything done right then and there. Everything I wanted to be just done. I was working full-time at the hair salon, and then I would get home. I would spend all evening in her nursery working. Like, I was in the hardcore nesting. New Year's Eve came around. This is gross, so sorry about that. My mucus plug thing, it came out, and I was kind of like freaking out about it. But I didn't have a doctor's appointment for a few days. We actually had a good little bit of snow where I live. There was snow on the ground in my car, my husband's car, not four-wheel drive, but my mom's is. So after that had happened, I had already had a doctor's appointment, I think a day or two afterwards. So my husband's, one of his aunts is a nurse, so we kind of just called her and talked to her a little bit. I figured everything was fine. I was like, I'm going to see the doctor in a couple days anyway. So a couple days later, we went to the doctor's appointment, and I specifically asked him, I was like, do you think there's a chance that I might like have her early? And he's like, oh no, I don't think so. Everything looks like it's fine. I don't think you're gonna have her early. So I was like, okay. I just had that gut feeling. Like, I feel like you just know. And we went out to Outback afterwards, and like, maybe I'm pregnant. I'm like, yeah, give me all the bread you got in that whole kitchen, baby. Could you imagine if I said that to the Outback staff? Like, that bread. Oh, I remember eating there. I remember the snow outside and that appointment. That was a good little adventure. I hadn't quite made it to where my appointments were like every week yet. I think I was still going every like 2 weeks, because the next appointment we had set out was, yeah, it was about 2 weeks. This was like the first week of January. We kept having snow hit. I want to say it was probably around like January the 13th or so. I had a issue. I had like some spotting, and I am freaking out about it. We called my husband's aunt, who's a nurse. Yeah, you're getting ready to have the baby, so that can be common at the end, but I hadn't had any of that the entire pregnancy, so I was like, I'm freaking out. I had a doctor's appointment set up a week from then. Yeah, because it was like a week before I had the baby. We had a lot of snow, and I really just wanted some maternity pictures. I wanted to take pictures in the snow so bad. And I remember it was January the 16th came around. We had this beautiful snow. My husband wouldn't let me leave the house for like my protection. Like, he didn't want me like pregnant driving out in the snow looking for place to take pictures, and like he's just a good husband. I remember I was making hamburger helper, and I started crying. I was like, if I don't get these pictures, I'm never going to be able to have maternity pictures, because I wanted to take some in the fall, but I wasn't showing because your girl here was sick the entire pregnancy. Even after I had the baby, I was just sick, and so I only gained like 6 pounds. I wasn't showing until like till like I had her. So I was crying because I wanted to take some maternity pictures, and he wouldn't let me go out in the snow because he's a good husband and he was concerned. January the 17th came around. We took those pictures. I'll put them on the screen. The roads were, they kept them pretty clear, so we found a good spot to go to take some pictures, and I was really happy with them. I wish I had something like cute to wear, but thought I had time. Her actual due date was February the 13th, by the way. I feel like I should like go ahead and mention that. We got the pictures done. I was happy. And my next doctor's appointment, we were actually gonna schedule my C-section because the whole time I was pregnant, she had not flipped. Like, her head was on top and her legs were at the bottom. She had not flipped to where she was head down. We were gonna set up an appointment to schedule the C-section. I think that appointment was on January the 20th. Or, no, just kidding. It was January 21st. I didn't get to January 19th. I was trying to go to bed that night, and I could not get comfortable to save my life. I was so uncomfortable, and I tell you what, I peed like 4 times before bed. Like, when you're pregnant, you have to go to the bathroom constantly. Peed 4 times before I went to bed. And I kept waking up through the night because, like, I was tossing and turning. I was already having a hard time because I, like, sleep on my stomach. And when you're pregnant, you can't do that. So I'm, like, trying to be comfortable as I can sleeping on my side. So I couldn't sleep. It was just a bad night. And I woke up around... My husband was still home getting ready for work, so it was probably, it was between 4 and 5, because he leaves work at 5, so it was probably around like close to 4:30. I woke up and my clothes were drenched. At that point in the pregnancy, through the night, I was having severe hot flashes. Like, it would be nothing for me to wake up and my clothes were like soaked all the time. I had to keep the house down to like 65 or under a lot of times because I was so hot all the time. My poor husband, I'm like freezing him out of the house. But I woke up and like my clothes were drenched, so I was like, oh my god, I must be hot again. And then I'm like feeling, and my shirt was completely dry, and I was like, what? So I didn't feel right, so I got up and I went to the bathroom. Like, this is way TMI, but like I sat down to pee and fluid just fell out of my body. Like, you know, it takes a little bit of effort to like pee, but like, I'm telling you, I just sat down and fluid just like fell out, and I was like, what is this? And I like felt my clothes and they were soaking wet, and I know for a fact I did not pee myself. I hadn't at all, like when I was pregnant. I get it, when you're pregnant that does probably happen, but I know for a fact I didn't. I had gone to the bathroom like 4 times. I knew I didn't, and my clothes were like drenched. And then I heard my husband, and I was like, oh, thank God, he's still home. So I was like, hey. And he's like in the kitchen getting his lunchbox together, and I was like, so, my clothes are soaked, and I know that I did not pee myself. And he comes like walking up to the bathroom, and I was like, I think my water broke. And the poor man, he's walking around, he has his hands behind his head, he's like pacing back and forth, and he was like, this 3rd trimester's really stressing me out. And I was like, you and me both, buddy. He stopped packing his like lunch work box, and he got out his hospital bag, and he just started packing it right up. We already had her bag packed. We already had the diaper bag and my hospital bag were already packed. They were just laying on her crib, so we already had those packed. Something was telling me to get those ready too. I had also stopped booking chemical appointments at work. Like, I was only booking haircuts because I don't want to be rushing, finish a color and my water break, you know. So he starts packing his hospital bag, and we're like, holy crap. He called it into the work number at his job. I was actually supposed to work that day. I messaged the group chat. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, my water broke. I was like, we're on the way to the hospital, which my local hospital does not deliver babies unless you're like walking in and the baby's kind of like coming out of you right that second. So the hospital we were going to is like, I don't know, a little over an hour from our house. We're getting ready to go to the hospital. It was so dark, and we had everything packed. We're driving down the road. I was starving. He was starving. It was also my father-in-law's birthday, so it's like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. We called him, and he started crying. Oh my god, he was like, hey, guess what? Tana's water broke, and oh, he was so happy because we're gonna share the same birthday. But anyway, we stopped at Hardee's, right? I got an egg and cheese biscuit, which apparently is a big no-no when you're having a baby. But you know what? I was like, I'm about to have a baby. I'm hungry. I don't know when the next time I'm gonna eat is, so I'm gonna get a biscuit. So that was a mistake I shouldn't have made, but I did. It's fine. So we got to the hospital and I walked in and I asked the lady where labor and delivery was. And because I actually didn't even make it to the point where I was going to the doctor every week. I had her like a month early, you know. We were gonna talk about this stuff at my next appointment, like what we were gonna have the game plan. I didn't have it together at all. I had everything prepared. Like, I organized the house real well. I had all the bottles. I had everything put away exactly how I needed it to. But as far as like getting the hospital and like where to go and like what to do, I didn't know. So I just went up to, I had called labor and delivery. I forgot this part. I called labor and delivery after I thought my water broke, and I was like, hey, how do you know if your water broke? And they're like, first of all, who are you? What's your name? Who's your doctor? So I told them, and once they realized where I live, like the fact that I live so far away, they were like, oh my god, like they wanted me over there like right now. They told me to put a pad on, and they were like, if it fills within an hour, your water is broken. So while we're packing the hospital bag, I'd gone through like 2 or 3. That's way TMI, but anyway. Called the hospital like 45 minutes after I called originally, and I was like, I told them that, and they were like, get over here right now. So that was before we started down the road. I just forgot that part. When I'm telling stories, I'm just like, we're going down the road. I had stopped at Hardee's. We're trying to text everyone. Of course everyone's asleep, because it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, like when we had actually left the house. We get to the hospital, and I asked where labor and delivery was. They told me, so I went up there while he was parking the car. And I walked in there. They put me in this room, and it was literally so nice. It was like they were, I guess, in the middle of redoing all the hospital rooms, but it was the first one that was like done. I tell you what, it had like this birthing tub that looked like a jacuzzi in it. It was huge. It was massive. Everything was like new and updated and stuff. So they tried hooking me up to stuff. I guess I have like bad veins. Every time I've ever had to get blood drawn, they always have a hard time with it. So they tried to stick me a good 10 times before they finally stuck me. They had me hooked up to all this stuff. They had me hooked up to this thing that was like monitoring my contractions, because I was having contractions, and I had the notes on my phone pulled up, and every time I felt one, I'd like put it on my notes, and they were like 5 minutes apart. So I had told them that on the phone too. So they had me up to this thing that was like checking my contractions. When I first got there, they got like a swab or something, and they checked the fluid to make sure that my water had broken. So they did that, and they had confirmed pretty quick that my water did break. So she set me up with a hospital gown and stuff, and I had also told them on the phone when I originally called to ask if my water broke, I had told them, I was like, hey, my baby's breech, because I could still feel her head. Like, her head was always like kind of on the left side, like actually right under my heart. She was probably like listening to my heart little thing, but I could still feel her head where it was, and I was like, hey, I wanted to tell you too while I'm on the phone that my baby is breech, and we were gonna set up an appointment to schedule a C-section like the next day. And I think that's why they wanted me to rush over there, because like the baby was breech, my water had broken, it was a month before my due date. There was just all this stuff. So they got me like, it's like they knew who I was like as soon as I got in. They were like, oh my god, they had everything like rushed. My original doctor, he was actually working in another, like he was traveling from hospital like in each town, and he was actually not working at the hospital that day. Sorry, my camera battery died and had to let it charge in a little bit. So my doctor wasn't there, and the doctor on call was doing a C-section. She had one scheduled after that, and then she could get to me. They had checked to see how far along I was dilated, which I think it was only like 1 or 2 centimeters. Like, it was like barely anything. Gotten there probably around 7. I think it was scheduled at 3 was when my C-section was scheduled. We had all that time to let everyone know what was going on. I think I posted it on Facebook, and then we called our families and stuff. So while we were waiting, they had asked me some questions. Like, one of them was like, have you had anything to eat? So I had to tell them about that Hardee's biscuit that I ate, and that was a big no-no. That was a running joke the whole time we were in the hospital, was the freaking Hardee's biscuit. Because of having that Hardee's biscuit, they gave me this little shot of like stuff that I had to take, and as far as I can tell, like, so when they gave me the anesthesia, I also had to take out all of my piercings and stuff, and I put them in this little cup. Since I'm O negative, like during my pregnancy, I think when I was 28 weeks, I had to get the Rogam shot, which 0 out of 10. The nurse that gave it to me, she was like, sorry that I have to do this, and she literally took it and was like, right into my arm. That sucked. They were getting all that together in case I was going to have to get another one, because from what I can tell, if you are O negative, you have to have the Rogam shot, and they told me I would have to have a second one if the baby wasn't O negative. I don't know how any of that works. I can't remember. It was kind of like a blur. Like, those few hours went by very fast. They had brought my husband in this like it looked like just a trash bag suit, and he had to put it on in a like a cap and a mask. Oh, of course we had to wear masks. It was like during COVID, and I had to get ready. They had explained to us like what was going to happen. We had to fill out a lot of paperwork. They brought paperwork in. There were so many people in and out of the room like talking to us about things, and I was just like, oh wow. They come in, they're like, okay, 30 minutes till, you know, we're gonna have the baby. I think they finally got the IV like on my arm right here. It was like sitting on top of my arm because they couldn't get it anywhere else. I think they put me in a wheelchair or something. They wheeled me down the hall. The C-section room. It was like this big white room. It was full of people. There was a lot of people in there. There's like the doctor, the person that takes the baby and checks it out afterwards, the anesthesiologist. There's so many people in the room. They're all like introducing themselves to me and everything, and I'm like, oh my god. I'm like overwhelmed as crap. And the whole time I was in the hospital, honestly, I have to give props to like the hospital staff that took care of me, because I was hysterical the whole time I was there, because I was scared. Pregnancy and childbirth are like my biggest fears ever, so that was the thing. And then also I was having my baby so early. I was so scared that something was going to be wrong with her. So I'm not okay. Like, I'm freaking out the whole time I'm there. They took me in the room, and the anesthesiologist, he came up and started talking to me, and he was explaining to me about different stuff. And then I had to get the shot everyone hates. I'm going to put it on the screen because I can't. He starts talk to me, and he tells me I'm gonna have to like curl up like a shrimp, and I had like a pillow, and they took like one needle and like put it in my spine, and then the needle was there, and then they had a second needle, and it like would follow through and like put the numbing stuff in my spine. I had to have that done, and I was like hysterically crying at that point because I was really scared of it. But then he actually did it, and I was literally like, I've had Braxton Hicks worse than that. Like, it was nothing. And I'm over here freaking out over it. Gave me that, and then to test it, like, he took this needle, and I'm laying on the hospital bed, and he starts like stabbing me with it, and he told me to like let him know when I could feel it, and he's like going up my body, and I was like, I think I can feel it, and he was like, he slid me a little extra morphine, I'm pretty sure, after that, because I don't know. I was very hysterical that day. I really do give it to him for putting up with me, because I was so scared. It was like almost at the surgery. My husband's still not in there yet, and I'm like, he's all I wanted. I'm like, where is my husband at? Because I don't want him to like not be here. So he finally came in. He was like the last person in the room before everything started. I mean, they were pretty much had already started by the time he's like coming through the door. He sat beside me, and they like cut me open, and I didn't feel a thing. I did not feel any of that. Next thing I know, I didn't even honestly know they started. Like, that's how little I felt. The next thing I know, the doctor, like, there's a tarp thing in front of me. Like, I can't see this happening. And the doctor, like, I guess she pulls out Serena, and the first thing she says is, "Don't worry, she won't be this color for long." And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what color is she? Makes me think I'm freaking, she pulled out like an avatar baby. Like, what's happening? Apparently babies are like really gray when they're born. Like, my husband could see her, but I couldn't see her. So I guess she gave the baby off to the person that checks the babies, because I saw her like to the right. I could like hear her crying, and like I remember I heard her cry, and I was like, oh my god, she's okay. Everything's fine, she's okay, she's crying. She carried her off over to like the right, and I could see her over there. She was like cleaning her off, and like she was like weighing her and measuring her and stuff. Then finally they brought her around, and like, of course, like, I can't hold her because I'm like getting worked on, but my husband, they handed her to him, and like he held her up and like held her up to my head so I could see her, and I was like, oh my god, she looks just like my husband. She has his nose exactly. She was like exactly like my husband. Then they told me that they had to take her to the nursery, and they told my husband that he could go, so he went with her to the nursery while they stitched me up, which the stitching up was like the longest part of all of it. Maybe it's because I wanted to see the baby so bad, but I don't know. I'm like laying there and I'm like, oh my god. It felt like forever. So they stitched me up, and what I was kind of wondering, I was like, how am I gonna get out of this bed like when I'm done, because I can't walk, and they've got more people to be delivering babies to. Like, another thing, when they gave me that medicine, they told me that it was gonna make my chest feel heavy. So I do remember, it was a blur. I don't remember if it was before or after I had the baby, but I remember laying there and it felt like they were just piling like weights on my chest. Like, I felt like I was like, my like insides were like being crushed. It was like, I was like, ugh. I don't know. I think that's when they were stitching me up, actually. They rolled a hospital bed over to the bed where I was, right? So they rolled it right up next to it. Kind of explained to me what's going to happen, but not enough for me to like register. They like put their hands under my body, got me over to the side, so I'm like spazzing out because I think I'm gonna fall, and then they kind of like rolled me over onto this hospital bed. Oh, like, and all the while I'm like numb completely to where I can't like move. I could barely even move like my head. Oh my god. That was like one of the worst parts of it for me. Like, then they wheeled me to my new hospital room, which, that real nice bougie hospital room that I had, no, forget about her. We don't know her. I was in the tiniest little hospital room. I think that the bed that they wheeled me in there on was my hospital bed. I think that's how that worked. I can't even honestly remember this. All I remember is they kept wanting to give me something to eat. Didn't want anything to eat. They had these little baggies in there that you could throw up in, and I mean, I was sick the whole pregnancy, and then like everything I ate I was throwing up in, and it was making it so much worse. Like, I had just been like cut open. Like, I don't want to eat, and I kept throwing it up, and that was terrible. So I eventually, that just stopped, and I don't remember what happened after that. I think I just fell asleep. Yeah, I think I did actually, and I think when I woke up they were bringing the baby in to see me, and I finally got to hold her. So I held her and everything, and I was so tired. I didn't have any energy in me at all. I did not wake up that morning expecting to have a baby. Had the baby and everything, and they had her in the nursery. We spent the next couple of days in the hospital. I had her on a Thursday, and we were able to get out by that Sunday around noon. So it wasn't too bad of a hospital stay. And then while I was in the hospital, oh, that was exhausting. They did give us like a little celebratory meal. They gave us a menu, and like we got to order in, and I remember what it tasted. I had like a veggie wrap, and it was awesome. Take a lot of medicines. I had a catheter in. That was awful. That sucked. When the nurses changed shifts, sometimes they wouldn't get to me as well as I needed to sometimes. I remember specifically, I think it was the second or third night I was there, I needed my pain medicine, and the changes of the shifts of the nurses had happened, and they were like, oh yeah, she'll give you your pain medicine at 10. It was like 9 when I had asked, and so I was like, okay, that's just another hour. So I'm like waiting, and then 10 comes around, and I'm like, okay, my pain medicine. And then it was 10:15, and then it was 10:30, and then by the next I know it was 11. And I think sometime around midnight I finally just broke down. And I was crying so hard. I was in more pain than I've ever been in my life. I was like, I couldn't do anything about it either. So I got up and I started pacing around the room. Say after the C-section, to try to walk as much as you can to like get your body back in it or whatever. So I literally remember just trying to walk, and I was in so much pain. I had like tears streaming down my face. And I made it back over to the hospital bed, and I hit the button for the nurse, and the poor receptionist answered. And like I could barely even speak. I was in so much pain, and the nurse got caught up doing something. She couldn't get to me, so she had to get a way to get the medicine down to me. I think she had to go to the nurse and get it authorized and then get it to me, and she herself brought it to me. And she's like, "Oh my God, why didn't you call us sooner? Like, you need this, you just had this like severe surgery, you don't want to get to this point." And I was like, I tried. That was probably the hardest night there. It has been a year since I had my daughter. That is so hard for me to believe. I literally feel like I just had her. Like, the details of being in the hospital, I feel like I just lived through them. I feel like I just had her, and it's crazy, and I love her more than anything in this world. It's been incredible watching her go from day one. Like, I'll put a picture on the screen. From day one, just having her, to like, here she is now. She is the love of my life. She is everything in the world to me. And I'm very, 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 very fortunate to have her. And I love you, Serena, so much. And happy birthday. One day it'll be cool. She'll get to watch this in the future. Know where she came from. Thank you all for watching and listening to the story of how I had my daughter. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I will see you in the next one. Bye!